Good evening and welcome everyone.
Greetings, everyone.
We started a little bit late this evening, so I say, let's start reading. Let us take the initial human being as an example. The distinct thing about him is, compared to other stages of development, that an automatism seems to prevail in him. Raised out of the lack of comprehension, he most often cannot afford more than a state of doing his deed with semi-comprehension or none at all. And this state can continue on like this in many cases, up until the quite advanced stages of humanity. And yet again, throughout the whole of humanity, complete comprehension may not be established. We have already said that the purpose of all these automatisms is to prepare mankind for the knowledge and comprehension of duty.
A short passage, but it tells us so many things. Here, first, what do we need to understand when we read? An automatism seems to prevail in human, because humans cannot walk the path of spiritual development by willingly and consciously. Their advance on this path needs to be ensured by making them encounter some enticing or some troubling and scary events in proportion of each human being's level of development or of sensuality. This is the automatism that is meant here. And at the initial levels of the human stage, the comprehension is almost nil, in the sense that the comprehension of the being is not wide enough to grasp the causality connections between events and situations. This is a very intense sensuality. Imagine this: yes, the animal stage is concluded, intermediary milieux between the animal stage and human stage are concluded, and now it is time for the being to utilize a human body in the world for the first time. Its first incarnation as a human. It is natural that humans that don't know about their self, their body, and the states of the world have to live by the very intense, very strong automatisms. As their comprehensions widen, or in other words, as humans begin to walk the path that they have to advance on by their own willpower, these automatisms begin to lighten, to weaken. Yet, total comprehension is not possible in the human stage. Therefore, even for people know and talk about such automatisms like we do right now, there are still many automatisms prevail, because we can become more or less comprehending in a lifetime, and at best, semi-comprehending. We cannot go beyond this in this world due to the current conditions and structure of the world. This fact is emphasized in this passage. We can see this widening of comprehensions in how the ancient beliefs or the meanings given to some natural events like eclipses or big hurricanes change over time. For the ancients, such natural events may mean a fight between gods or a punishment from gods, so they need to sacrifice a few virgins to appease the gods. As the knowledge is increased and the comprehensions widened, the humans understood the connections between the natural events and the cause and effect chains within the system they live in. Consequently, their beliefs and practices changed accordingly.
Many examples are given in the previous passages about automatisms. For example, the one about a primitive female that given birth to a baby, and even for her to care for the newborn. The beings in duty were directing her by the influences sent to her. And the progress of humankind, first, survival. Later, the phase of groups to act and be together. Then communities appear because humans see that when they are together, the survival becomes easier. However, just like a toddler that name everything as mine, egos get developed, and groupings get divided by differences in leaders, or in-group struggles over possessions like the game hunted or hunting tools. At first, humans struggle with nature, but later they begin to struggle with other humans. And as you said, as humans progress towards rather rational phases, they begin to understand nature more, to make connections between events and happenings. But let's be honest, now, at our current level of our development, we need to understand the interconnectedness of everything within the greater cycles of our world and our universe. But still, we tend to make choices and decisions from the sensuality side, the earthly craving side of our duality unit. Consequently, automatism, as a developmental mechanism, still prevails in our life. Majority of the humanity is automatically reacting and responding to life events like toddlers that insist that everything is mine, and a large part of the human population is still at the stage of survival. Nevertheless, like the tip of a pyramid, a small percentage of human beings spends efforts to breaking out of those automatisms by becoming more aware, more conscious of the mechanisms prevailing in humankind. As life events force us to get out of our comfort zones by making us aware of the automatisms we live by, we get out of our comfort zones. And we know that what we read and discuss in this series we started last year to make this book more accessible for readers are not suitable for such comfort zones. We talk about death and dying. We talk about automatism. We say this world cycle we live in will end. We say the sufferings we live through are very important. We talk about from where we came and to where we go to, stating from the amorphous matter to higher levels of energy or chemistry, physics, etc., etc. And what happens when we don't willingly try to spend effort for breaking out of those automatisms? Well, life has myriad events to pull us out of our comfort zones and push us into the midst of so-called unexpected plot twists in the way we live our life. And the frequently underlined point is, all of these is for preparing our comprehension to the plan of duty. I mean, all of those developmentary stages the beings go through. All those efforts and experiences, etc., are for to assume a function consciously within the universe. Yet for now, we act like as though we are dry leaves swept by the winds. Those automatisms pull and push us to various directions. And behind those automatisms, there is a system of beings in duty that works for arranging all temporal and spatial cause and effect chains to help the completion of all needs of the beings without any conflicts. Just before we begin this evening's lecture, I noticed a consequence of my automatic action. Dinner was delayed a bit and I felt panicky, thinking that I will be late for starting the live streaming. This haste and concern took me out of my center. I became careless. And then what happened? I opened the book and saw the bookmark, but this was misplaced, and I didn't even notice the page number. And when I was live on Instagram for inviting our dear friends to this evening's lecture, I gave the wrong page numbers to them. Just because I acted without awareness, I misdirected people. Now, I remember that sentence from this book. Each deed to be done should harm neither the higher nor the lower. My intention was to be on time for this lecture, but because I acted in haste and without awareness, I acted automatically, and I experienced this just before we started. I learnt a good lesson about this tendency for haste within me. Yes, let's continue reading. The beings using human bodies live within innumerable events, which are subject to conditions, by utilizing the possibilities and conditions of the milieus they use the bodies of. For these events will prepare mankind for the intuition of duty. Natural and accustomed discipline of the plan of duty will be learned by the innumerable applications to be done on the face of the stern and adamant countenances of these events. Therefore, for the beneficial events to occur, mankind needs other beings, that is, communal situations. However, these communal situations do not only cover mankind. Animals and even plants are included, and this situation is an imperative, in other words, a necessity of the imperativeness of gradual preparation of cultivating each other within a massive cadre of beings in the world. The most objective example of this is body cells. Mankind lives with these primitive beings in each other's embrace, and is destined to each other within a vast communal plan. The cells constituting the heart of a man, for example, need the body of that man for their development, just as that body needs those cells in order to live. As the illness of either of the two affects the other, the health of both ensures mutual well-being. Therefore, communal lives that exist among all these beings are not in vain and purposeless.
Among the points made in this passage, the most striking one is this phrase: imperativeness of gradual preparation of cultivating each other. Yes, as humans, we are subject to the conditions of existing as current humans on this planet. And within the boundaries of these conditions, Our priority is to become ascended to the level of comprehension that merits our inclusion in the plan of duty. So, in order to accomplish such an ascension, we need to do myriad exercises to acquire the required level of comprehension and the necessary experiences. We live in the midst of events that are sometimes pleasing and sometimes harsh. And of course, we don't do this by ourselves, naturally. We do all of these within the communal plans. And this wonderful fact. If I, as a human being, can say these words right now, it is because of the contribution of billions of cells that make up my organism. You know, sometimes the whole mankind is described as a single human body. Mr. Ruhselman likens human body to a factory, in the sense of its hierarchical workings. Or, let me be inspired by the earlier spiritual communiqués, and let's say, when one of our eyes is hurt or harmed, other cells don't say, "This is that eye's problem, not our business," or if there is a hangnail in your pinky finger, your entire body gets activated to deal with the inflammation there. Indeed, what we need to acquire as human beings is to become such an entire and singular body of humanity, and towards that aim, we cultivate each other, be it knowingly or unknowingly. As you just mentioned, the important point is doing this with comprehension, with awareness. Yes, here, in this world, with all other beings, plants, animals, in short, all cells that make up our whole planet, live and act, sometimes knowingly, sometimes unknowingly, towards the great purpose, elevate each other and provide each other with actions that will merit us towards the plan of duty. As to the topics like events, essence knowledge, family unit, and communal plans, I'd like to remind our dear friends that they can watch our previous videos in this series. We already read and discussed these topics in depth.
Yes. When we read about natural and accustomed discipline of the plan of duty will be learned by the innumerable applications to be done on the face of the stern and adamant countenances of these events. In this passage, I remember the forest fires of the summer of 2021, around the area I live in many places of Turkey. Yes, if we stay in our homes without any connection to the outside world, to other people, without hearing and watching the news, without internet and mobile phones, we can continue living without too much hassle and trouble. But, last summer, when the forest fires started in many places at once, people were forced to get out of their comfort zones, because not only trees, but all living beings of the forests were in survival mode. Wild boars with their babies ran to the town centers. People were mobilized to help villagers to save their cattle and pets from the flames and sparks that started fresh fires. Animal sanctuaries collected those pets. People from other cities came to help the firefighters and the victims. Solidarity was intense. Yet at the same time, there were actions done automatically. Some people ran to help but with their flip-flops and swimwear, without any gear protecting their bodies. And of course, they were burnt and created extra problems for the firefighters. Yes, their action may look selfless, but in the hindsight, we can see such actions as thoughtless, without any awareness. They are reactions, not actions. And the help given without awareness may lead to greater harm. As a silver lining during those forest fires of the last summer, I felt that the Anatolian spirit, which is based on solidarity, cooperation, and collective work, had awakened. And I witnessed, on top of the lockdowns during Corona pandemic, this natural disaster brought out such solidarity among people who discovered their ways of contribution to their community. The interconnectedness of all beings is a frequently mentioned topic in our lectures. Because of this interconnectedness, my own automatic actions affect all other parts of this whole. Just think, with every breath I take and every experience I have, I add an influence to this whole. And all those interactions occur through magnetic fields of all beings. And of course, the other humans, animals, and plants around us become affected and influenced by our magnetic field. And each of these beings has the potential of eventually becoming a part of the unitary, the unity of the universe. So, the question is, how we can strengthen or increase this interconnection, how we can learn from the events we encounter in life, As we had previously read in the divine order in the universe, we learn by the experiences we had firsthand. This is called the stem knowledge. And we learn by observing the experiences the others have. And this is called the branch knowledge. Whenever I read this book, I repeatedly think that how so many profound and complex topics are explained in such a fine and natural manner. Fundamental facts are so simple, but we humans make them too complicated. And in this passage, the divine order and the universe once again explains these facts, as if saying to us, "Dear human being, look and see that the system governing your body and the system governing all those observable galaxies works by the same mechanisms. There is polarity, duality in everything, and you try to find a balance between these two sides. And to whichever side you give weight by your choices, decisions and actions, to which side you disrupt the equilibrium. Some new events, some new tests and trials that are colored by sensuality, by earthly cravings, or by the sense of duty appear in front of you in order to nudge you for making more conscientious choices and decisions. Learn whatever you need to learn from these, glean whatever you need to glean from these, and compare new learning with the previous learnings." Let's continue reading. The communal plan is a synthesis of individual plans which advance side by side, unknowingly getting strength from and standing by each other in order to fulfill the developmental necessities within their own possibilities. And this is an imperative of the developmental automatism in the life of mankind. Besides the communal plans mankind make with beings that are much smaller than them, there are more significant plans they make with comprehension with their fellow men, even with some disembodied beings. All of these plans are the imperativeness of development. For, as we have said, the development of man becomes possible by his engagement with the preliminary applications of the intuition of duty belonging to the plan of duty. However, in the great plan of duty, before everything else, there is coordination and cooperation in the true sense. That is, there is a complete unity among them, an inseparable cooperation in all of their activities relative to the organization groups in that plan. This situation is an unfailing basic of that plan. On the contrary, when working in separate ways, it is not possible to be able to do application of such a tight coordination and cooperation. And when this is the case, no preparation can be done towards the plan of duty which advances within a collective activity.
At this point, I think we need to change our ways of thinking about cooperation. I mean, there is no such thing like a being at the top says to the being at the bottom, "See, I am holding your hand and pulling you up." Or the being at the bottom says to the being at the top, "Because I support you, you exist." This is not the case. This is like a circle. All beings are hand in hand around it. You know, our elders were saying, no one is in debt to another one, everyone is in debt to duty. As we read more about the developmentary mechanisms working in this universe, we understand that our individual life plans must reveal and be actualized within communal plans, so we can get developed and evolve. And we read the most important point in this passage. In the plan of duty, there is an incredible cooperation and coordination. However, we human beings are just doing the exercises of living together, the exercises of working around a mutual purpose, the exercises of contributing to life and sharing what we receive from life, the exercises of comprehending doing all of these in a cooperation and coordination. Yes, each of us is different individual beings, but within a certain hierarchical order, and around a mutual purpose we are trying to achieve something. Indeed, these are exercises oriented to that sense of duty, to that intuition of duty, to the widening of comprehensions. Let's look at the system of the universe. The unitary is at the top, below the plans of duty, and the influences filtered through the unitary are distributed throughout the universe from top to bottom, through organ-organizer relations. Still, every being is a part of the harmony within the boundaries of their levels. Yes, we humans are not yet of that harmony, because we are not included in the plan of duty, but still, within the whole of universe, each of us is a part of harmony. and all those parts of the harmony are hand in hand, pulling each other upwards. This is why the communal plans exist, because by our individual plan, we can do this only up to point, or, let me correct myself, we cannot do this by our individual plan, not by ourself. Because as beings we have to get developed in order to utilize matter and develop our relationships with other beings. Because our beings express the behaviors of our spirit by forming, deforming, transforming matter combinations, and our being acquire the necessary matter possibilities through the bodies it built in the hydrogen cosmos matter, and consequently through the environment and the relationships of those bodies. And because of this, our relationship with others and the environment must continue without cessation. In other words, as we provide the appearances in matter as reflections of the evolutionary needs of our spirit, we are a vehicle of influence, a material structure, the technical expression of the spirit on matter. Consequently, we are influenced so we can be able to utilize matter and also to send out and receive influences. Together with billions of cells and billions of other cells and other plant and animal bodies. And in this passage, we see that the communal plans contain not only our fellow men, but even with some disembodied beings. I can say two things about this. First, if needed for the development of some beings, such disembodied beings may bring out obsession cases, or some human beings with mediumship capacity, or for metapsychical studies, may need to encounter a wide spectrum of such beings, so they can discern the developmental levels of disembodied beings. Second is to make the general human beings more aware of all those different developmental levels of disembodied beings. You know, there are many pitfalls of following persons, sects, or groups with grandiose claims of enlightenment. I mean, higher plans expect our ability for discernment gets developed more and more. It is similar to be able telling right from wrong. As we get developed, we should become more able to discern the subtleties among the myriad examples of spiritual knowledge. Again, the most important point made here is the complete coordination and cooperation in the plan of duty. And in order to be merited enough for passing into the plan of duty, we human beings need to learn coexisting in this world, in coordination and cooperation. We must receive from others, and we must give to others. When done consciously, this is an immense web of exchange, and our contribution to this web of interconnected exchange needs to be oriented towards the duty component of our conscience mechanism, without harming the lower, by caring for the equilibrium. After all beings are for completing and ascending each other. Each particle is necessary for each atom is necessary for each molecule is necessary for each element, etc. Such an immense and magnificent chain. Yes, we are here to accomplish this state of becoming united in cooperation and coordination, within, and maybe against, the restrictions of world matter and comprehension. Among us, there are good people and bad people, and all of us are having myriad experiences to complete what our current life plans, individual and communal. And the most important thing to remember is to have tolerance and compassion for each other. All of us are on this path to further development for passing to higher realms.
I'd like to add a few things to your words. One of our dear friends commented by writing, "In the olden days, the families were large. The young were living under a roof with their elders. Now, the number of people living alone increased. Does the individuality increase when we get closer to the plan of duty?" Actually, this state expresses another level of the being's development. We had discussed the previous levels: survival, gathering as groups for greater chance of survival, tribes, emergence of leaders. The mythic and mystic phases shaping the beliefs and superstitions, which were the initial intuitions of humans about the greater system's workings, then, rational phase. And as we advance in our developmentary path, we started to discover that everything is interconnected. Interestingly, we started to become more and more individualized, yet, this is another necessary step for a human's self-actualization, because we are at the level of taking our own responsibility, and of displaying our own power by situations that look like individualistic. Yet, through this individual empowerment, we will begin to work for the betterment of the whole humankind by our own will and conscience. This level on the developmentary spiral is called the transpersonal stage by the contemporary thinkers and philosophers. That is, after going through the individualistic phase and becoming aware of your own being and your place in the greater system, you become involved with the whole. And as it happens in every level, phase, or stage of our development, we sometimes swing to the far end of the pendulum. Yet, the system always brings us events to rethink about our decisions and choices. For example, this corona pandemic. What happened to all those persons that were renting and living alone in their small flats? When the world economy was forced to a halt, and the concerns for the health of our loved ones increased, many people returned to their families, to their towns or villages. Suddenly, we were back to that olden days, as our dear friend commented. And this happened in many parts of the world, not only in our country. And dear Ümit, as you nicely expressed, to reach that state of unity, cooperation and coordination, all of us will be more or less mandatorily taken out from our comfort zones and automatisms, habits and addictions through events and plots, twists of life. Because all of us need to question our realities, to find out the connections among us, to bring out our conscientious side, and to become together in the true sense of the word. We will encounter such events. All of us. None of us is exempt from this process. Alright, let's continue reading. As we previously said on the topics of nation, family and communal plan, big or small, all communities in the world are made up of human beings who are unified around mutual aims. Although complete cooperation, which is natural in the plan of duty, and considered ideal or even unknown for the world, that is, a unity with comprehension which is put into effect at certain points, does not exist in the world communities. The effort of unknowingly preparing and getting dragged towards that ideal exists in mankind, and this is the imperative of the need that is called evolution at that stage. This state flows on automatically. Actually, there is almost no community in the world that is constituted with a true comprehension of duty, and by individuals who could display the power to advance for the sake of any goal as a single individual. Nevertheless, all of these communities, by their completely different automatisms with qualities in general which are activating various earthly cravings, allow the appetite, desire and striving of mankind to cooperate with heart and soul, and the real but hidden goal here is the preparation of mankind for intuiting the meaning of the obligation of cooperation within a complete unity and with the real comprehension and knowledge of duty, and they're doing the exercises of this with the help of these automatisms. Individuals in a family, children learning in a school, workers working in a factory, soldiers drilling in a barracks, public officers working in a public department, diplomats reaching a decision in a meeting, patients getting treated and doctors caring in a hospital, citizens constituting a nation. In short, the innumerable communities of mankind are powerful and entraining vehicles ensuring the sublime intuitions of the great plan of duty with their automatic qualities.
First, I'd like to remind our dear friends that in our previous videos we read and discuss the topics of family unit, nations and states, races, etc. in detail. Do you remember the passages on the spiritual communication quoted in this book by a certain group of beings in duty? I think it was around page 80. There we read examples of those instantaneous interactions among the cadres of duty that are tasked with temporal, spatial and technical details of even a seemingly small event in a person's life. Yes, the conditions and requirements of the plan of duty are natural for that realm, yet these are ideals for human beings in the world. We previously mentioned that the mutual purpose of all processes and progress the beings went through, until we reach at our current state in this hydrogen cosmos, is to be included in the plan of duty. Because of this, what is natural for that plan is ideals for us. And for turning this ideal to a fact, all of us, knowingly but mostly unknowingly, are doing exercises of becoming more and more suitable in comprehension and conscience for the plan of duty. We gain experiences. We are born into our family, and they nurture us with their sense of responsibility. Later, the scope of this sense of responsibility widens by the norms and traditions of our community. later by the rules of the education and business life, and laws of our nation and country, etc., whatever we gain and acquire through those myriad experiences are preparing us towards the plan of duty. I am sure, for our dear friends who read the divine order in the universe or follow our videos so far, it is easy to see that the sense of responsibility is emphasized many times in this book. And of course, the role of love has utmost importance in the development of conscience and responsibility in a person's life. At the initial developmental levels of our comprehension and conscience, at first we live for ourself, by our self-interests, by self-love. Then, in the next level, our conscience expands towards loving and protecting our family, caring for their needs. And at the next level, our conscience expands towards our community, our town or village, our nation, our country, etc. And after a certain level, we begin to feel responsible for all existence, without discriminating plants, animals, humans. Our feeling of love and conscience becomes transformed into compassion. And even at that higher level of conscience, we will still be very far away from the plan of duty, because the degree of cooperation and coordination in the plan of duty will still be incomprehensible for us. Yet we will continue our efforts and exercises towards that goal as the whole humankind.
Your words about love and compassion reminded me one of the earlier spiritual messages. Love is to complete a lack of another being. Of course, in the sense of experiences, impressions. However, in our world, the appearances of love are almost always conditional. If you love me, then I love you. If you give me this, then I love you. It goes like a bargain. But again, we don't have complete comprehension as human beings in this world. Just as we read in this book, despite their current level is very developed, humankind is mostly automatic, or more or less comprehending, at best, semi-comprehending. In this sense, the plan of duty that has complete comprehension must be loving we humans very much, otherwise, why would the entire universe be activated to complete our lacking points, the points we couldn't complete and accounting yet by supporting us for further development? Of course, while we are in the midst of troubling, painful and suffering events, we say, how on earth I can choose this for myself? Our being, as the life plan for this lifetimes was outlined, by the help and support of the beings in duty, was very well informed about those lacking points. Because of this fact, we now feel the urgency of completing whatever we lack, of having whichever experiences we need to have in order to be able to reveal the power of our being in our lifetime. And sometimes, we learn appreciating the presence of something by experiencing the absence of that thing. Hence, in order to love and be loving, sometimes we are not loved. Or in order to find out our own power, sometimes we are powerless. As we read and discussed many times in our previous videos, each of us is a duality unit. So this system also reveals itself by such opposites, by such polarities. This is necessary for us to make comparison between things, and consequently, to gain knowledge of comparison. Only after this, we can gain ever-deepening impressions from events and experiences we have as human beings. Only then, the essence knowledge of our being increases. Yet, if we evade experiencing, learning, then the system repeatedly brings the necessary tests and trials on our path, until we learn the lessons we need to learn, or until we complete the lacking points. Yes, I remember when I initially felt the weight of that sense of responsibility you mentioned. Years ago, I worked in the pharmaceutical sector for more than a decade, and as I learnt all those processes in the factory producing all kinds of medicine for all kinds of treatments, I noticed the close-knit interconnectedness between a possible unseen accident, carelessness of a worker, and how such a small thing may affect the health of millions of people. Things in life are like domino tiles. When one of them is toppled, it creates a chain reaction of events and experiences. In this sense, we cannot see how and which cause and effect chains our decisions and actions we make now will bring out. Like a stone thrown into a calm pond, they create ever-widening circles of waves, and other beings, if they need to benefit from these waves in this or that way, then they become resonated with them. And we read in this passage, different automatisms which are activating various earthly cravings, allow the appetite, desire, and striving of mankind. It summarizes the tools of the sensuality or earthly cravings by which we attract our destiny. In other words, for whatever we have extreme appetite or aversion, then it becomes destined for us to encounter that thing and experience it in myriad ways until it is refined and neutralized. That is why we need to ask whenever we want something badly, is this a true need of my being? As we can answer this question in a sincere manner more and more, then, as you have mentioned, it becomes possible for us to notice the higher and lower components of our reality. And we read in this book that influences and intuitions of a higher reality are always transmitted to the lower levels. So, it is important to become and remain open to receive these refining influences and intuitions. And we find more possibilities for such exercises and applications of widening our comprehension and conscience in our relationships with other beings. This is why, as we get developed as individuals, we also get developed by our communal relations. Yes, some of us are doing this by automatisms, and some of us are doing this more or less consciously. After all, none of us can say, yes, I completed this human stage, goodbye to you all, I am passing to the plan of love. As we read in this passage, although complete cooperation, which is natural in the plan of duty, and considered ideal or even unknown for the world, does not exist in the world communities, the effort of unknowingly preparing and getting dragged towards that ideal exists in mankind. Let's not get dragged and walk this path willingly, together. Yes, it is time again to say good evening to you, dear friends. See you next week.
Thank you for your comments and questions, dear friends. Good evening.